Now, today, as we close out our series, what I want to do is talk to you about fashion. Have you heard of the show, What Not to Wear? Okay, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to teach you what to wear, okay? And I know you're a little nervous right now, but I want to give you a little fashion advice, okay? And as you can tell, fashion is kind of my thing. Okay, and speaking of fashion, I figured I'd start the sermon with something really important that happened to me. Kind of an accomplishment, a great achievement in my life that I've been working for literally years on. And it has to do with Taco Bell, okay? If you don't know, I have a strange obsession is probably the best word to define my love for Taco Bell. And for the past 2.5 years, whenever I go into the drive-thru, if I see a manager wearing a button-up Taco Bell shirt, I ask if I can buy it from her or him. And they all say the same thing. Sorry, sir, these are for managers only. The only way to get one is to become a manager. And since my wife will not let me do that, trust me, I've thought a lot about it. I could probably do 2 jobs, I think. I only work on Sundays, right? Anyway, so I ask and ask and ask, and they deny and deny and deny and deny until recently. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the proud owner of a 2XL ladies cut female manager Taco Bell button up. Huh? Come on. Yeah, fashion expert. Ladies, let me give you a word of advice. Your buttons are on the wrong side, okay? I cannot button it. That's why it's open. It's really difficult. Number 2, though, it fits okay. I thought it'd be tighter in the muscles. I thought I had more. But it really has this nice bell shape at the bottom, so there's some benefit to wearing ladies' female manager shirts. All right, but I am talking about fashion. I thought it'd be funny to start with that. I don't know that, they threw up my selfie. I was so pumped that day. They're like, oh, it's you. We have it. And I'm like, what? And I thought they were going to give me like an old one off their back. And they gave me a brand new XXL ladies manager. I also, just because I'm talking about Taco Bell, this week someone gifted me with a great piece of wall art for my office here at work, huh? Very Christian painting, 4-foot by 8-foot banner in my office right now. So there you go. All right, let's get into the actual word today. What we're going to do today, again, I'm going to talk about fashion. We're closing out our series called Shipwrecked, where we're talking about how to avoid relationship wrecks. We want to teach you, and we tried to have been teaching you over the past few weeks how to have healthy, godly, good relationships. We started with how to resolve conflict in a healthy, godly, biblical way. And then we talked about friends and those close Lego-level friendships, and it's important to have them, and it's important who they are. Then we talked about a relationship with God, that if we're talking about relationships, you got to talk about a relationship with God, the first and foremost, the most important thing, the thing that your life should be anchored on. And then last week we talked about influential relationships. Specifically, I talked about the parent relationship, but basically anyone you have influence over, and we talked about ways to be healthy and godly in that. And today, we're supposed to be closing out with the marriage relationship. But when I say that, some of you are like, oh, come on. I'm not married now. I'm not married yet. I haven't been married for a while. I don't plan on being married for a while. And you might be wondering, how am I going to get anything out of this? Well, the passage that we're going to look at today, we're simply just going to do a word study and pull out a bunch of different words and define them and help you see that these are powerful, impactful words for any relationship you have. Just specifically today, I'm going to take this passage and most of my illustration is going to be pointed towards the marriage relationship. So don't tune out if you're not married or don't want to be married or not going to be married for a while. I want you to pay attention. What I want you to do today is I want you to, essentially you could say this way, we're going to talk about how to be a better human, okay? And I believe if you're a better human, you'll be a better husband or a better wife. And so we're just going to talk about how to be a better human, a better person in a relationship. And so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to walk through this simple passage in Scripture that actually is not written towards the husband or wife anyway. It's written towards anyone who's a follower of Jesus. So if you're a follower of Jesus, this is for you. And we're going to talk about fashion and following together. And we're going to do that here today. And the reason I picked this specific passage is actually because a couple weeks ago, I got the opportunity, the privilege to perform a wedding for 2 people of our church, 2 of my friends, and one of them is on staff. He's our middle school coordinator here. Check these guys out right here. First selfie. So if you can see it on my phone, I'll just pull it out. It's broken. But anyway, I got this cool picture. I always take a selfie. Hey, I always get the first selfie of the happy couple. Give it up for Jordan and Deborah. She even knows to throw the deuces up. I love it. So the reason I share that is because I asked them, I always ask, is there any special verse or poem or anything you want in your wedding? And they said, well, we like this verse to be read. And the passage of scripture that we're going to talk about today is the passage that they said they want to be read at their wedding. And when I read it in the room with them, I was kind of like, why? This isn't the typical, love is patient, love is kind. It's not the typical husbands do this and wives do this. But when I asked them why this specific passage, they said, our hope and prayer is that our marriage would look like that. And as we read it here in just a second, you're going to see that it's a beautiful picture of what a healthy, godly, good relationship will look like, specifically and especially in a marriage, but I believe any relationship. So let's read the passage together. Thank you, Jordan and Deborah, for setting us up this week to talk about something that I'm really excited about our message together. It says, therefore, as God's chosen people, remember this for everybody, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, and bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord has forgiven you. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Now, if you're married in the room, my hope and prayer is that you will think through this idea of how can I be a better human so I can be a better spouse. You will chew on this verse and say, how can I make this what my life looks like? As you can see, we're talking about fashion because it says to clothe yourself. And so when I opened up this word and see exactly what this Greek word means, it says to dress yourself, clothe yourself, or to put this on in your life. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to say, what are the things that we need to dress ourselves with to have healthy relationships? No matter what relationship in your life that you would like to get stronger, better, or closer, you need to clothe yourself with a few of these virtues that they talk about if you want a healthier, stronger, deeper relationship. And I want to start by saying this. You got to know this. You probably heard this, but you got to know this. The only person that you can change in a relationship is you. The only person that you can fix in a relationship is you. For our purposes today, the only person that you can dress is yourself. If you try to dress someone else that doesn't want you to dress them, that's awkward and weird, okay? Don't do it. So for our purposes today, the only person that you can focus on, the only person you can change, the only person that you can impact is you. So don't be thinking that you now have some ammunition for your spouse when you get home. Oh, you need to listen to the message today. He's talking about you. And if you're sitting next to your spouse, don't start elbowing when you're like, yeah, you need to work on that. No, think about you. What do I need to clothe myself with? Pay attention to say, do I have this in my closet at home? Or do I need to purchase this? Do I need to work on this? Is this something that I need to put on in my life? So we're just going to take a look at what it is that we need to clothe ourselves with to have healthy, godly, good relationships. So to start, I'm actually going to take off my Taco Bell shirt because it tells us that we need to put on some things. And the first thing it says we need to put on is compassion. So I figured I'd at least make a t-shirt, at least one, to show you that this is something that we need to put on, to clothe ourselves with, to dress ourselves with every single day. You need to put on compassion. And all I really did this week is take each word and look it up, the Greek word that it was written originally, and see what that means. And then also head to Google, because Google knows everything, and find out some definitions from Google as well for you. So you'll kind of hear me talk a little about what it means. So this first word, compassion, that we're supposed to put on, I found this definition. I absolutely love it. It says to suffer together. To have compassion for someone means that you're choosing to suffer with them. And where I found this definition, it went on to say that it can be described this way: the feeling that arises when you are confronted with someone else's suffering and you feel motivated to relieve that suffering. That's compassion. The feeling that arises when you're confronted with someone else's suffering and you feel motivated to relieve that suffering. Think about this in your marriage. This means when one of you is struggling, when one of you is going through something difficult, the other person is right there with you to go through it. When you get married, according to God, according to the Bible, it says that the two of you become one. There's this weird, cool, physical, emotional, spiritual thing that happens when God sees you. He doesn't see you as two, but he now sees you as one. And so the cool thing about that is when something good happens for one of you, it's good for the other. promotion or some sort of achievement. It benefits the other. There's no way that Jim could have won the volunteer award without his wife allowing him to leave the house. Most of the time she was saying, yeah, you should go volunteer more. I'm just kidding. But right? So that $50 gift card is for her, all right? Because when something good happens to you, Jim, it happens to someone else. Because you're one. But on the flip side of that, when one of you is suffering, the other suffers or should suffer with you. They should go through that difficulty with you because you're no longer two, but you are one. Suffer together. Your spouse is the person that should always be there for you when you're suffering. They're so close to you that when you suffer, they suffer. They don't just have empathy. Empathy is a little bit different. Empathy is like, oh, I feel your pain. No, this is I suffer with you and I'm motivated to help relieve your suffering. It reminds me of a saying my dad used to say, and I'm pretty sure we had a magnet on our fridge growing up that said, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. You know that one? If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Now, it's a silly statement, but I think it's interesting to think about it that way. If your spouse ain't happy, you shouldn't be happy unless you're trying to make them happy and trying to rub your happiness off on them. Like happiness is contagious, right? But if they're struggling, suffering, and going through something, you need to be right there with them, trying to relieve their struggle and their stress. When my wife is hurting, man, that's the worst. I would much rather have pain. I'd much rather struggle myself. I'd much rather take that on. But when she's hurting, I want to help her. And it wasn't in my notes, but I remember our first kid. Oh, man. Our first kid, my wife, we decided to not have what's it called, the epidural? Yeah, second kid we did, okay? But the first kid, the first kid we didn't. And I know that it was really, 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 really hard for her. There's no doubt in my mind the hardest thing, it's crazy, okay? I get that. But I always told people, like, it was really hard for me. And all the wives, when I would say that, all the moms would be like, oh, it was, huh? Real tough, huh? Yes, at one point I did go and just get a piece of pizza to get out of the room. But besides that, I'm telling you, one of the hardest things we've ever gone through was watching this person that you love so much go through pain and suffering, and there's nothing, I can't do anything but say, they kept telling me, just tell her to breathe, rub her back. I was like, what? Breathe. You're doing great. I tried humor, and at one point our, what are they called? Doula? Doula obligata? I don't know what she was called. Our birth helper, at one point, she said, Chase, it's time to quit joking. That's a fact. She did. That's a fact. So the only way I know how to relieve stress and suffering is to make a joke, and at one point they're like, yeah, it's enough. Your wife's not going to tell you, but I am. But it's hard. It's hard to look at someone you love and care about so much and watch them suffer without wanting to relieve that suffering. But that's compassion, to want to suffer with them and to also try and find a way that you can relieve and you're motivated to help relieve that suffering. That's what we need to put on. If you want a healthy marriage, start by having compassion for your spouse. If they're hurting, struggling, or stressed, suffer with them. Don't let them go through their junk alone, but clothe yourself with compassion. Now, the next word it says in here, it says you need to put on kindness. So I figured, well, if I'm going to make one t-shirt, I might as well make two t-shirts. And I want to help you understand something. It doesn't say take off compassion and then put on kindness. It doesn't say you have compassion or kindness or gentleness or patience. It says you got to have it all. And so I'm going to teach you a really important thing about life is if you want to look cool, put on 8 t-shirts, okay? At least today, that's what I'm going to do. Put on kindness. Now, when I looked this word up, when I think of kindness, let me ask you. Someone shout out, kindness, define it for me. What's the definition? Be nice. That's what I thought of. To be nice. So we'll just stick with that. We'll stick with yours. To be nice. And I thought that was pretty good. But I had to look it up because I was like, is that it? Like, I'm kind, I'm nice, right? So I looked it up. And actually on Google it says to be friendly, generous, and considerate. It's a little bit more than just being nice. And what I really like is the first word that I found was friendly. I really like that. And when you think about this in the marriage relationship, if you're married today, here's what I want to tell you something. You need to actually be friends with your spouse. I know it's deep. But you're not just called to love them. I believe you're called to like them. And you should like them. As a married couple, you need to be friends first. And don't forget to continue as you grow older in your marriage to invest into your friendship. You need to love and like them. This is the one relationship in life where you make a promise not only with the person but with God to stay together forever. No other friendship do you say, okay, God, me and my best buddy Joe, we're going to be best friends for life. That's weird. Although I'd like to do that with some of my friends so that they're stuck with me forever, you know? But your marriage, that's what you do. But it seems to be that I see a lot of this happening in the marriage relationship through marriage counseling and through just observing relationships and through being friends with a lot of married people. It seems to be that the one relationship that is really easy to push your friendship aside and to let other things get in the way is the marriage relationship. Many times married people let other things push their friendship apart. So here's how it works. You get married because you just love being around each other. I don't know why my wife did, but she did. She just loved being around me, and I love being around her. We just became best friends, and I was like, I want to spend all my time with you, so let's get married. And we like each other so much that we want to live together, and even when we're sleeping, we want to just be next to each other. Or in our house, the king bed, so it's like here and here. Because she likes me, but she also likes sleeping. So think of how powerful of a friendship that is. You like each other so much you want to sleep in the same room. You're sleeping, but you want to be next to each other. That's how much you like each other. That's really cool. But then what tends to happen? What tends to happen is you come back from your honeymoon, right? And all of a sudden life happens. You got a job. And now your job starts to take you away from your spouse and take up time that you once had just for your spouse and your friend. Now your job continues to take you more and more away from your spouse and your family. And then along comes kids. And let me just say, kids are needy. Let me say it this way. Kids are really needy. And you used to care about the needs of your spouse, but now you have just, all your focus is on your kids because they're so needy. And then you get a dog and a cat and a rabbit and a house. And now you have a dog, cat, rabbit, house, so there's litter boxes and there's laundry and there's cleaning. And all of a sudden, the time that you used to just spend looking at your spouse because you just loved each other and you just stare in each other's eyes, you didn't need a TV or nothing. Now, you don't have time. You're busy and you're tired. And what used to be time that you had just for each other, now it's going in other directions. And those things aren't bad in and of themselves. I mean, I'm grateful for my kids and my dog and my house. We don't have a cat anymore. Woo, grateful. But what can happen is you spend less and less time just hanging out with your best friend that you married because you just want to spend more time with him. And now, your relationship is looking more and more like roommates instead of like husband and wife. You love each other, but you haven't invested much time into liking each other, into being friends. And if you want a healthy marriage, I promise this is good for you. You need to put on kindness, which remember, the first definition was friendship. Because what's going to happen one day, because you promised for life, what's going to happen one day, all the kids are going to be gone, the job's going to be done, your time is going to be a lot more free, the animals might be with your kids or gone from your house, and you're going to look over, and you're going to be stuck with, you're going to get to spend time with that person, a lot more time with that person. And I want to encourage you, don't make it weird because you didn't invest into your friendship now. You don't just want to love them, you want to like them. Kindness is not just being nice to your wife. Kindness is being friends with her. Find things that you can do together, talk together, laugh together, go out together. You may not love Grey's Anatomy, but she does, and so you will too. And I'm just saying, once you start watching it, I wouldn't know. But I know a guy. You may not care about sports and football, but he does. So find something that you can do together. Find a way that you can like it together. Put on this kindness, which really is just friendship. Man, be friends with your spouse. If you want to keep going, we'll go down. It says you also need to dress yourself with, humility. Humility means, I looked this up on Google, it says a modest or low view of one's own importance. A modest or low view of one's own importance. I like the way Trent says it. He often says it this way. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking about yourself less. That's good. It's not just about thinking less of yourself, like, I'm not as good anymore. I'm humble. I stink. That's not humility. But humility is where, I love this. you have a modest or lower view of your own importance. And think about that specifically in a marriage. From now on, once I was married, my view of my wife and her wants and her needs and her desires, I elevated those above my own. I'm not thinking less about myself, but I'm thinking about my wife more. I'm figuring out how can I love her and honor her and please her more than I think about how I can love and honor myself. Marriage isn't about what you can get from that other person, but marriage is about what you can give them. And listen, if you're both doing this, if both of you are saying, how can I elevate their needs and wants and dreams, and your wife is thinking the same thing about you, if you're both doing that together, then your dreams and wants and needs should be met, should be taken care of. But remember, this isn't just for married people. All of you out there go, oh, when you're married, you have to be humble. Not me. No. Remember, this is for anyone that claims to be a follower of Jesus. And truly, this is for anyone that wants to be a good human. Be humble. Because remember, this was written for everybody. But if you look at another place in Scripture, it says this. It continues to tell us that we need to be humble. And as you go on, it'll say this in Philippians chapter 2. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking out for your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. Let me give you a piece of advice. The world does not revolve around you. What? But I'm a millennial. I'm just kidding. I am too, all right? That was a joke. That was too mean. I'm a millennial. I'm full-blooded. I love it. All right, go millennials. I don't know. But the world doesn't revolve around you. And honestly, no offense, boomers, but listen, everybody, the world doesn't revolve around you. It doesn't revolve around me. But my hope is maybe that my wife thinks that she's the center of my universe, right next to Jesus. I want to live in such a way that I honor her, that I'm constantly thinking of how I can lift her up and love on her and care for her. And I want to have humility. I think not less of myself, but think about myself less. So we need to clothe ourselves with humility. Well, if we keep on going, we're going to see the next word, gentleness. Gentleness. I really, really like this one. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but if you look it up, you can see that it's defined as this: the quality of being kind, tender, and mild-mannered. I like that. Kind, tender, and mild-mannered. Now, I want to point out just one quick thing on this. I don't know why the people that we love the most, we tend to be the meanest to. I don't get it. But again, as I pay attention to marriages and relationships, whether it's through counseling or just observation, because I love watching people and listening to people, I start to see how people talk to their spouse. And I start to ask, why is the closest person, the closest relationship that we're supposed to have in life next to Jesus, why are we the meanest to them? So many marriages, when I see how spouses talk to one another, I'm confused. You love them? You love them so much you wanted to move in and spend all your time with them, and yet you yell and scream at them? You use words that you would never use with your boss or your mama, but you call your spouse that? For whatever reason, we tend to be harsh towards people that we're supposed to love the most. Colossians 3:19, just after it says clothe yourself with all this stuff, it pulls out the husband. It says specifically, husbands, love your wives and never treat them harshly. And I'm a fan of equal rights, so let's flip this. Wives, love your husband and never treat them harshly. Think it's fair. Never treat them harshly. In my home, right before we got married, I made a commitment because I'd seen other marriages do this and other people that were married do this. I just didn't want my life to look like that. I made a commitment to never raise my voice towards my wife and to never call her names besides little nicknames, pet names that you don't want to hear anyway, okay? I made a decision early on that my wife will never hear me mock her, make fun of her, unless I'm joking, but like in an argument, especially even when we're having a discussion that we disagree, where I might be wrong, I decided I'm never going to raise my voice, and I'm never going to be harsh towards her. Great job. Thank you. And as of next week, 12 years of marriage next Sunday, we'll have done that. And I think you can ask her, has Chase ever yelled towards you? And unless she's downstairs and I'm like, I'm lazy, I don't want to come upstairs. Come here, honey. Unless that is the case, I've never raised my voice towards her. I've never called her name. Because I want you to hear this. It's not just for me. If you would like to solve any sort of conflict, it will not help to yell at them or to call them names or to use your words to treat them harshly. That doesn't solve conflict. It helps for preaching. Just kidding. See what I did there? You cool people. But it never helps conflict resolution. I've never been like, thank you so much for yelling at me. Now I understand. Right? Man, guys, never treat them harshly. Never put them down. Gentleness is tender and mild-mannered. And I was just thinking about this just to lead us into the next one. I was thinking to remind myself this, that the way that I treat my wife is how my son is going to learn how to treat his wife and his mom. The way I talk to her, the way I act around her, he's going to say, oh, that's how a husband acts. That's how a husband talks. And the way that I treat my wife is how my daughter is going to learn how she should be treated and can be treated by her spouse. Yeah. That's right. And wives, you're not off the hook. The way that you treat your husband is the way that your son is going to feel that he should be treated and can be treated. That's right. The way that you treat your husband is how your daughter is going to see and learn from example. You can tell her, be kind, love him. But if she watches you treat him harshly, she's going to learn that that's how you do marriage. I'm telling you guys, we want to put on gentleness. Gentleness, tender, mild manner with our spouse and honestly with any relationship that we want to stay close. But it doesn't stop there. It keeps going. And it doesn't matter how many shirts I put on, it gets hotter and hotter up here. So I'm going to speak faster and faster. But it says next that you need to put on patience. Ooh, patience. Now, I found this definition. I like this one. It says to have internal and external control in difficult circumstances. Internal and external. That's how you think and feel inside and how you express it to those around you. That's patience. Even during difficult circumstances. Maybe at times in your marriage, you could describe your spouse as difficult. I promise my wife has and could describe me as difficult in our marriage. But patience says that even when you're with someone who is difficult, you can have internal and external control. Now, marriage is amazing. Like, it's incredible. I love being married. But it has potential to be one of the hardest relationships you could ever have. Because remember, two totally different people who think different, act different, talk different, come together as one and now have to make decisions as one. Like, where are we going to set the thermostat? I'm just telling you, sometimes someone can be difficult. I mean, right? Marriage can be hard. But it's in those moments, patience is internal and external control, even when someone is difficult. And what you need to understand this is just as much as you need to give patience to someone else in a relationship, you need to understand you need it back from them. Because you're going to fail, you're going to mess up, you're going to be difficult sometimes. And so remember that. When you know that you need to express patience towards them, know that the more I express towards them, hopefully the more they'll bring it back to me. Because sometimes I am difficult to deal with. You need to be able to give each other grace, knowing that there are no perfect people, therefore there are no perfect relationships. So find a way to put on patience. Now, this next word, technically it stopped saying put on, but I wanted to put on more shirts for the fun effect of it. So this next one might be my favorite one out of all of them. It says to bear with. Now, I looked up the Greek word to see what it actually very specifically means. Do you want to know what it means? This is so good. Okay, check this out. Here's what it literally means. To put up with. Yeah. So when they translated, they're like, let's be gentle. How about bear with? To put up with, or you could say the word endure. And I just share this to remind you, kind of in jest, but also kind of to you to understand this is kind of true. There might be some minor things in your marriage that you can't change about your spouse that you may just have to put up with. You may just have to bear with because you love them. Remember, two of you, totally different people coming together as one. There are definitely some things that my wife just has to put up with, like my strange obsession and passion for Taco Bell. It's not changing. Sorry, honey. I love it. Love it so much. She doesn't love it like I do, but she loves me. Or the fact that I snore. Sometimes she's got to bear with me, okay? You got to put up with it. We bear with, put up. Now, these aren't major things. It's not everything. You shouldn't be like, well, I have to put up with everything because that's just how they are. No, it's not everything. You don't put up with everything or anything. These are minor things that maybe don't need to be changed, but they may bother you. So you bear with them out of love. My wife likes me to make sure that all the doors and windows in our house are locked every night, even those on our second story floor windows. Because for some reason, she believes that there's gonna be a robber coming down the road with his ladder on his shoulder and throw it up there, and he's gonna find the one unlocked window in our living room. And I'm just always like, bro, if guy wants to rob me and carries a ladder up there and he can get in the second window, come on in, man, come on in. The safes in the bedroom is yours, all right? Do I think it's absolutely ridiculous and silly? Yep. Do I do it every night? Absolutely. Why? I love her. Let me share with you a phrase that has been important in my life. If it matters to her, it matters to me. If it matters to him, it matters to you. If they care about it, you care about it. That'll help with friendship, and that'll help with things in your life that maybe you just need to bear with, to put up with, to endure, because you love them. Now, last one, again, it's not really something that we're supposed to put on, but it clearly tells us to do this. And then this one gets its own extra sentence. It doesn't just say forgive. It says forgive one another. If you have any grievances against one another, forgive just as the Lord has forgiven you. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we talked about this in week 1 in conflict resolution. And anytime you hear forgiveness talked about from a Christian perspective, it's unique. We forgive just as we have been forgiven. I love this line, forgiven people forgive people. God forgave you when you did not deserve it. And so, we're called to take the same forgiveness that God has poured into our life and pour it into the lives of other people. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it godly? Yes. Forgive just as you have been forgiven, just as the Lord has forgiven you. And I really think through this, sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the person that you love the most, because when they hurt you, it hurts the most. But if we can learn to practice forgiveness with our spouse, it will help us be better forgivers to everybody else. So we forgive just as the Lord has forgiven us. Now, if we jump back to our passage, let me just read the whole thing, and let me point out one thing that comes at the very end. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience. All of them. Not just one, not just either or. Bear with each other and forgive. Forgive as the Lord has forgiven you. And then look at this. And over all these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Now, we're supposed to bind them all together with love, even if they don't have an extra large zip up and you need it because of all the t-shirts you have on. Hopefully it works. Yeah, all right. Bind them together. What? That's what I call a schmedium, you know? I'm just kidding. Bind them all together with love. Now, this isn't just any kind of love. Remember, I did word study on every single one of them, and this specific word for love, you've probably heard before if you've been around the church, it's the word agape. And now, there's different kinds of love in the Greek language. There's Philadelphia, which means brotherly love. There's a word that means intimate love, like you have for your spouse. But then there's this one that means agape, which means godly love. What he's saying here is you need to put on godly love, which kind of binds it all together. Or what he could be saying is you need to love because it kind of, the definition of love is all the words that we just said earlier. Like every shirt that's on under here could be a definition for love. So he says you need to take the same love that God has poured out in your life and figure out a way to pour it out in the lives of other people. What's the most common passage of scripture in dealing with love. 1 Corinthians 13, love is, yeah, you know it. And it begins to define the word love, and look at the words that it uses. See if any of these are familiar to you. Love is patient. It's on here somewhere. Love is kind. Kindness. It does not envy, boast, and is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. That sounds a lot like humility. It's not easily angered. Gentleness, tender, mild-mannered. It keeps no record of wrong. Sounds a whole lot like forgiveness. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Or another word, other translations use is always endures. Bears with. Every single word that Colossians says that we need to put on in our life is used here to define the word love. That's God's kind of love. God has a compassion for you and a kindness towards you and a gentleness with you even when you don't deserve it. He puts up with you sometimes. He forgives you. He bears with you. That's who God is. That's how he feels towards you. And that's how we're called to feel and love other people, is the same way that God has loved us. It's love that binds it all together. It's a love that God has for us, we have for others. I always believe that the Christian walk is just to take what God has given us, his grace, his mercy, his kindness, his love, his forgiveness, his compassion, and we're supposed to have that towards everyone else around us. But here's the thing. You can't love other people with a godly love, with the love that God has for you, if you've never received and accepted his love. You want to know how God loves you? He demonstrated love for you in this. He sent Jesus, his one and only son, to live a perfect life, die a death that you deserve to die, and to come back to life. And Jesus coming and living and dying and coming back to life was God's expressing his love towards you so that you can be in a relationship with Jesus and therefore in a relationship with God and spend eternity with him forever. Everything that is good is God. Everything that is awesome is God. And when you receive that, when you begin a relationship with Jesus, you receive Jesus into your life, you receive God's love, all of it, all of his goodness, all of his kindness, all of his forgiveness, all of his compassion, all of his mercy. You receive all of that into your life. And then we take what God has given us and we're able to pour it into our relationships to have what I believe healthy and godly and good relationships. So if you want a healthy relationship, if you want a healthy marriage, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other. Forgive one another. And over all these things, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Let me pray. God, thank you for your word. Oh, thank you for the simplicity sometimes where you just say, hey, put this on and this on and this on and this on and this on, and life will be better. It's not easy. You don't get to pick and choose which ones. But I'm so grateful for the simplicity of your word and how we can take all that you poured into our life and we can pour it into the lives of other people. My prayer and hope today is that somebody listening, online or in the room, got something out of this that will help them take a step closer to that relationship they have, that help them take a step to a stronger, healthier marriage or a stronger, healthier friendship. My hope and prayer is that we would be more like you as we take what you have given us and give it and pour it out into our relationships. And I believe we'll watch them flourish. Thank you, God. Amen.